With the release of CS2, Valve looked at all these beautiful ranks with so much heritage, absolute icons of the FPS gaming community, and to honour them, they decided to throw them in the trash, ironically de-ranking them, get it? From the new main competitive game mode Premier to regular matchmaking. Instead, Premier got a new system, completely devoid of life, consisting of number go brr or number go aww that symbolises your skill in the game. They also threw in some colours, which I can only assume is because, as we all know, half of the CS community can't read. These numbers and colours are then further separated into brackets of 5,000 points, which tells players their rank. Complete 10 placement games and get put into a bracket. Get to the top of a bracket and win a promotion game, you get a new colour and a bigger number. Fall to the bottom of your rank and lose a relegation game, you still get a new colour, but your number gets smaller. Simple, right? Now you understand how Premier ratings work? Although you didn't already, considering you clicked this video. Let's go through what each rank is like and what your CS Premier rating says about you. Oh my god, he said the name of the video in the video. Before we get into it, keep in mind before you go commenting, actually, I'm 7k rated, but I want 1v5 Prime Astralis easily, that these are generalizations. They're always going to be outliers depending on your region and other things, something I will get to in my grand theory at the end of this video. The absolute depths of the depths, the lowest rating bracket currently in Premier. If you're here, I'm going to make an educated guess and say you either suffered a severe accident lowering your brain activity, in which case my prayers are with you, or the much more likely option that you're a new player. Now, the concept of a new player in CS is pretty weird. Most people that play CS are addicted degenerates, to the point where I personally would open a profile and then see an account with 450 hours and think to myself, wow, less than 3,000 hours? This guy's an absolute scrub. Despite the fact that 450 hours is 19 whole days of someone's real life that they have dedicated to clicking on heads in the gambling game. So just keep in mind, when I talk about hours throughout the rest of this video, we're talking in degenerate hours, not real life hours. You'd be forgiven for assuming that most players in this bracket failed their basic human anatomy class, believing that the vital organs of their opponent, you know, the heart, the brain, the penis, are actually located 3 feet under the ground. But, to give them the benefit of the doubt, the real reason you see them constantly aiming down at the floor is more likely because the phrase crosshair placement might as well be words from a distant civilization on the other side of the universe. Crosshair placement is a concept we'll get more into later, but for now all you need to know is that bad crosshair placement combined with spray control is the reason that most duels at this level are likely to look something like this. Ultimately, at this rank, there is really not much strategy to talk about. Maybe you'll get someone calling which bomb site to go to, maybe saying they'll play a certain position on CT, but I wouldn't hold your breath. Basic economy management likely won't exist even on a personal level, never mind coordinating a team buy. And don't even think about utility. The best you're gonna get involves a myriad of team flashes, nading and mollying your own push, and smokes that would make even Stevie Wonder ask, where was that meant to go? Is it definitely it wasn't meant to go there? But despite all of that, there is definitely some childish joy about the low ranks. They're having fun. Maybe they aren't great, but they'll get a good play every now and then. And while the players here are at the bottom of the pit for skill, they haven't yet fallen into the pit of addiction, depression and despair that most of us seasoned players are in. And trust me, that pit runs a lot deeper. So now you've battled your way through the low ranks and you're 5k rated. You probably now hit the sweet spot of skill to enjoyment. You probably know the maps you like, and they're probably both covered in sand. At this point, most players are still aiming down at the floor, but at least now it's at the opponent's little toe as opposed to the ground. You've learned that simply holding mouse 1 when you first see an enemy isn't the most effective method of getting yourself a kill, and you're aware of what it takes to control a weapon, even if you can't do it yet, and these things combined allow you to perform a little better in your games. You might actually start to feel like you're getting the hang of the game. You probably expect a little more from yourself, and when you meet those expectations, you get a huge dopamine rush. Sure, you have a bad game sometimes, but who cares? You're still relatively new to the game at somewhere between 500 and 1000 hours, and the other team are probably smurfing or cheating anyway. You might even have got to a point where you've decided to learn a couple of smokes, and teammates on the mic will be excited to put new strategies they have to good use. And while they probably still fail 90% of the time, you're starting to understand how important team play is in Counter-Strike. You have a rough idea about economy management, and the start of your addiction has truly started to set in. These are the first steps to becoming a real Counter-Strike degen.
I just told you who I thought I was, a god!
You've made it. You are finally average. This is the point where the phenomenon of the Counter-Strike ego begins to set in. No longer are you a little scrub. You've dedicated a lot of time to this, and you begin to think you're good at the game. And when you don't perform, my god, does it begin to hurt. You're now probably seeing negative returns on skill improvement to enjoyment, hoping those little dopamine hits like getting an ace make up for those 8 matches in a row you just lost. Now if you're from any of these countries, you've probably just begun to expand your map pool, favouring some variation over picking your strongest maps. After all, at this point, some players will really have begun to practice the finer elements of the game. They've probably heard their favourite streamer mention crosshair placement one time and thought, hey, that sounds like a good idea. For those of you that still don't know what crosshair placement is, it's essentially putting your crosshair in the best position to be as close to a potential enemy as possible, thus lowering your time to kill. And while it probably isn't perfect yet, with some players clearly estimating the opponent to be either a dwarf or your average basketball player, it still beats aiming at the ground. And maybe you even have a warm-up routine on aimbots or some other aim trainer that you 100% do every time and never just instantly queue into a premier game. You and the teammates you run into are beginning to take the game more seriously, and while this comes with better team cohesion, more accurate calls and better economy management, toxicity levels are higher than ever. Mess up and buy on the wrong round or fail a clutch? Expect to be transported back to a Call of Duty lobby back on the 360, with people doing their best Linus Tech Tips impression.
Like, I'm not gonna deny that I dropped my fair share of hard R's back then, because we didn't even, the term hard R.
Dropping the hard R, like it's not that serious. All in all though, you're now a solid player, and can't help but to continue the grind to the heights of the game. You are now firmly better than your average CS player, and your ego shows it. You are way too good to ever make a mistake in a match. If you lose, it is almost certainly one of your teammates' faults or cheaters. At this point, you probably have anywhere between 1.5 and 5,000 hours, and just to give you a mini heart attack that might make you rethink your entire life, that's between 62.5 real days, not so bad right, and 208 days, which is over half a year of your real life. Because I'm a masochist, I did some quick calculations based on what I assume might be close to average. A 20-year-old player with 5,000 hours has spent 4.2% of awake life playing Counter-Strike. And the shit gets even worse when you account for time when you're actually conscious, i.e. not a baby. 8.4% of your awake life playing CS. You see, this is the kind of degeneracy I'm talking about. But all this degeneracy has given you something to show for it. At this point, your ego is more justified. You probably have pretty decent crosshair placement and aim, have at least a basic understanding of all the maps in the pool, and have a couple of maps down really well, like knowing what positions you're good in, and maybe you're even willing to call a couple of strats with the util you know how to throw. You definitely aren't afraid to tell your teammates when they fuck up. And the N-word has lost its punch, as it's probably now your most heard word, along with a litany of other swears and slurs. At this point, the addiction has truly started to set in. You really, really want to win, and when you lose or have a bad game, it has the power to completely ruin your day. Maybe you're tracking your stats using a third-party service like Leatify, other stat sites are available, and it pains you to see that it tells you that you aren't actually perfect and still have areas to improve. This may be your breaking point. You either decide CS isn't for you and hang it up to try out something a little bit easier like Valorant, or like an addict looking for their next fix, you decide to scrape up every little bit of improvement you can find to try and find a way to continue to improve. Sorry to interrupt, I'll keep this brief. Thanks to you guys, I now have 3% of my silver play button, and you brought down my ETA of getting it from this to this. So if you're enjoying the video, please consider subscribing to help me bring it down even further.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So you stuck with it, and now after all those hours grinding the game, through the highs and the pains and torment, you made it to the top 5% of Premier players. You understand the game at a high level, know exactly what you need to do to succeed, and yet you're left feeling like there's more. This is where you start to go one of either two routes. You either continue to have a huge ego and stagnate, with everything continuing to always be someone else's fault, or you come to the realization that in the grand scheme of things, you were never actually good in the first place. To quote someone, honestly I have no idea, it has been attributed to so many different people, maybe Einstein, maybe Aristotle or something. The more you know, the more you realise you don't know. The same is true for Counter-Strike. At this point, you know all of the fundamentals down to a T, and realise there are still many players who are infinitely better than you. You probably question if you've hit the peak of your ability, or if it's possible for you to keep on learning, especially when you see little freaks of nature like pro player Donk absolutely destroying everyone at such a young age. Although, as a quick aside, I did the same calculation about percentage of life played for him, and holy shit, 16% of his awake life playing CS. No wonder he's so good. And regardless of whether you keep improving or just keep playing at this rank for a long period, in my mind this is essentially the peak of achievement in Premier, for reasons we will get onto, and a huge achievement that a lot of players may never reach.
And I learned how to bunny hop. Have you seen this?
At this rank in Premier Season 1, you'd be forgiven for thinking that Valve had baked in a secret Beyblade competition game mode into Counter-Strike. But rather than ripping a sweet blade, the people in this rank would actually go out of the way to cosplay as them. Rather than a competition of skill, this rank was reserved mostly for those whose parents never showed any love to them, and thus for validation had to do something I have avoided speaking about up until now in this video. Installing cheats. Now, cheaters exist at every rank, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to talk about it before because giving these losers the attention they so clearly crave didn't seem like a good use of mine or your time. But at this rank, it was undeniable. Whether people were rage hacking or the much more egregious, in my opinion, legit cheating, as far as I know, I never made it to this rank. It was hard to find a real legit lobby at this level, and while in Season 2, I think the rage hacking issues have mostly been solved, or at least the Beyblade cosplayers have been mostly removed, there are probably still a shit ton of legit cheaters, god I hate that phrase, ruining the experience for everyone else. And this is the reason why I claim 20 to 25k is essentially the peak of Premier skill, because the influx of cheating at the high ranks means the step up to the next rank is not now only a battle of self-improvement, but also a battle against the fragile egos of basement-dwelling bitches who swiped their mum's credit card while she was doing a chicken tendy run to purchase some advantage-giving software. Still though, those who make it to this rank legitimately, you are now in the top 0.5% of players. Probably less when you account for the cheaters, and at this point you are most likely properly married to CS. It is probably one of the only games you play, and you're probably watching back your own demos to see where you went wrong, maybe even watching pro demos to try and improve, and are all in all just a great Counter-Strike player. And now all that separates you from the top of the top is team play, because let's be real, regardless of your Premier rank, trying to get 5 teammates with functioning mics that speak English and aren't instantaneously toxic is still the equivalent of opening 5 knives in a row. Honestly, for this one I have basically nothing to add. At the time of writing this, it's only the top 384 people in the world. Most of them are probably cheating, and those that aren't are most likely queuing with a 5-stack of other incredible players, or are already professional players themselves, or at least close to being pros. I've never had any experience playing with or against people at this rank, so I'll leave this to the comment section, who I'm sure are all actually 30k plus rated themselves, to explain what goes on here. Just before we get on to this next part, I'd actually already recorded and edited most of this, and then Hugh Nyanye or Jeff dropped a video with a different opinion on the state of Premier matchmaking, and I think his is really good and makes a lot of good points, and I don't think it detracts from mine. I think mine is just in support of that, so keep that in mind if you've seen both videos. Now, onto my grand theory I mentioned at the start, and at the risk of admitting everything I've just been through was completely and utterly pointless, Premier ratings mean close to nothing. Sounds a bit odd, but hear me out. While there is obviously a discernible difference between a player rated at 2k and a player rated at 20k, cheaters and smurfs that have played Counter-Strike since its inception, in tandem with the fact that in my opinion there is clearly a hidden elo system, means that when you go into a game, you'll face people who are 10,000 points worse than you, who will play like they're in the major final, conducting full executes and hitting instant headshots within just a few milliseconds, and you'll play people 10,000 points above you who seem as if they have no eyes, no ears, and certainly no hands. Personally, I think the biggest contributor to this issue is trust factor, a system that as far as I know hasn't been confirmed to be in CS2, but almost certainly is. Because of this, there is a chance that throughout this video you have thought to yourself that what I have said is not representative of your experience. And that is completely fair. I'm coming at this video from the angle of playing this game in high trust factor. I have over 5,000 hours, have been playing for close to a decade, and although in my younger years I have definitely been one of the toxic arseholes in your game, I am now a reformed player, following the Counter-Strike fair play guidelines to a T. Mostly. And I can't help but think that if I am in high trust factor and get matched against other players in high trust factor, the chances are that regardless of rank, we are all very experienced players and the skill is going to be high whether I'm playing at 10k or 20k. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you find yourself in low trust factor, you probably have to deal with way more cheating and toxicity hindering your progress, meaning by the time you break out of low trust factor by being a good boy, you're actually a much better player than what your rating would suggest, further perpetuating the issue of unfair lobbies.
But hey, That's just a theory.
Bonathan.
Theory.
Ultimately, this means that your premier rating really isn't a good indicator of skill. Sure, if you're in less than 5k, you definitely suck, and if you're above 25k, legitimately, you're definitely good. But really, anything in between that, you should just try to focus on having fun and not letting it get to you too much. And that's all for this video. Please comment below your experiences in whatever rating you are. Obviously, I could go into way more depth on each rating, but I'm trying to keep my videos a reasonable length at the moment. If this video sees a lot of support, I might make a part 2 where I go into more detail on some of the finer details of each rank. Thank you so much for watching, have a nice day. Oh, also, I have a Discord now if you want to join it, the link's in the description.